Hello and welcome to Big Red Journeys. I'm your host Big Red, and on today's journey we're standing here in front of the Mission Basilica San Diego de Alcalá. For those who know about San Diego, this building holds great significance in our hearts. This is really the founding, this is the origin of San Diego in the state of California, really. Founded in 1769 on the original site of the Presidio. A few years later it moved to this current spot here in Mission Valley. And yes, it's called Mission Valley because of the mission. You know what else is called because of the mission? The Friars, the swinging Friars, my beloved Padres, named after the Franciscan monks who worked and lived in these walls. So, we're going to do a tour of the grounds, check out the Basilica, check out the rooms, see how the Friars used to live, how they interacted with the natives here. Obviously, there's going to be some religious history here, history of San Diego, history of California, and overall, we're going to have a great time learning a little bit more. So, if you care to follow along with me in this journey, let's go. Here at the Mission, we got visitor open daily from 9 to 4, adults are 8, 55, active military, and students are 5, children 6 to 12 are $3, and of course under 6 would be free. There is a gift shop and visitor center, and inside the visitor center is where we're going to purchase our tickets to get inside. Okay, so we just paid our admission. It was $8 for adults, $5 for seniors, military, and or students, and I believe children, I think 3 and under, were free. And then they give you some information. The volunteers here are wonderful at the gift shop. We'll definitely check out a little bit later. And mainly it was, from what I saw, a lot of religious items, but they also give you some information, a little pamphlet here, trifold, about the Mission Basilica San Diego de Alcalá. They gave you some items talking about some of the history, which is real nice, talking about the missions. But mainly you want to really keep hold of this trifold brochure, because inside it's going to have a map of all the different things, the archaeological sites, the museums, the garden, so you know what you're walking around. And it does give you, I don't know if you can see, but it does have a little red line there that kind of shows you which way to go on a tour. We were looking inside the little paper pamphlet that they gave us, and it talks more specifics, but this one really talks about like the items you're going to see within like the church, inside some of the museums. Gives a little history, like we're talking about like the santos and the candles and some of the relics and whatnot in here. Even talks about like the dig site behind me right here, some of the living quarters, a little bit of mission history. So this is good information to keep as well. Current site of the mission was moved here in 1774, a few years later, after the original mission was founded in 1769, the very important date here in San Diego. The original mission was closer to Old Town, where the Presidio was. I did a video about that area over there. But what ended up happening is that Father Uniprocera and the other friars realized that the area around that part was not very habitable. Farming, not a good source of water, and of course they also had some issues with the military soldiers there, that they were causing some drift or some angst against the local native tribes of the Kumeyaay Indians, who of course were the Native Americans here of the region. So they decided to go further away from the protection of the military and then go to the prison site that we're standing in today, and they had lots and lots of farmland, lots of water, access to water and everything here. So there's been a lot of change that's happened in the 200 plus years. The current site, as you see it there, is a lot of more modern buildings. Yes, the front facade and some of the church is original, but then most of the stuff that you're going to see about the original aspect of the mission is going to be below ground. So this area over here, this is original from the Convento or the Friary from 1806, this area that we walked. But this is where they would have office room, a library, working rooms, trade rooms, storage area. So this was all used by the Friars and of course the natives who lived on the land. But the Friars didn't actually live in this particular region. They lived in the room back over that way, next to the gift shop. So here you can see some of the adobe mud brick that would be common in the area, but really looking at some of the archaeological spots here. They actually do have students from UCSD and SDSU. They actually come down here and do their archaeological studies, but it's still pretty cool. You can actually see there's some original adobe brick peeking through right over there between the plastics. Oh, you can even see this one's really nice, because look at the bottom. You can see traditional brick there on the bottom flooring. The way that the original mission was built is that they had the Basilica or the mission in front, and then they had like living quarters that they would have the friars and some of the Native Americans would actually live and work in here once they converted over to Christianity, because the main intent of it was to establish a footprint for New Spain in Alta California. And then this is obviously before Mexico and before, you know, California became a state. And then the second mission of the mission was to convert the local people to Christianity. So we're going to do something slightly a little different here because there's actually a wedding that's about to happen here at the main chapel church. We're going to go in that first. Normally we walk around a little bit. There's kind of like a route that you go for the tour, but because of the wedding and the lucky fellow who is getting married today, we're going to go to church first, and then we'll do the rest of it. We'll be respectful here, obviously, because this is a actual church still being used to this day. So we're going to be respectful here of the people who are currently praying and, of course, getting ready for the service here in just a moment. You can see there are some true relics on here. The steps of Jesus on the crucifixion. You can even see some of the old adobe and the wood. This was redone, so some of it is old, some of it is new, but it still looks as traditional as it was back in the day. And there are church services here which you can actually attend. Wednesday masses, Sunday church services, and I think even some on obviously all the traditional holidays, religious holidays. There's the choir and the organ up top there. We have some artifacts here. So this is in dedication to Saint Junipero Serra, the father who pretty much considered the father of the mission system here in California. So we have a polychrome wood figure of Saint Anne. We had a poly wood figure of Saint Junipero Serra right over there. That's the wood figure of Saint Anne, from a 16th century Spanish school. And then we have the baptismal font used for the baptism. Oh, this is a replica of the same baptismal font that was used to baptize Junipero Serra in Petra, Mallorca, Spain, where he is originally from. Oh, there's a relic over there from Saint Junipero Serra. A lot of times, most of the relics are something that's personal items, such as like a clothing, an item that they own. Sometimes it's a bodily a piece of the body, fingers, bones. It just depends on what's made available. We talk here a little bit about the Native Americans, more specifically what were called the Mission Indians. So the Mission Indians were a name given by the federal government recognizing the Native Americans who were of Kumeyaay origin, but they were here in the mission area or lived here. What ended up happening is that the friars here would attract Native Americans with food, shelter, trade, opportunities to grow. Obviously, in exchange, they need to accept the religion of Christianity, Catholicism, be baptized into the church. And in truth, some of them used it, one, because they found themselves religion, but the other one is because that's a guaranteed source of shelter, food, and they were pretty much given a job here, whether they were paid or if it was just in trade. So they were given land to agricultural, to raise livestock, poultry, work here within the church, learn the religion, become religious figures themselves. So there was respect amongst the mission and the Native Americans there. So that is something that's actually quite impressive. We even have some traditional grinding rocks here, used to grind meal, corn, flour, and whatnot. Wow. Yeah, they even have the, what is that, the molcajete? The rocking grinder. You got a smooth rock board in right there, and you put the grain and grind it down like that, break down nuts and grains and flour. And maybe have some sort of chimenea or no, an oven here. Continue on, they do have a garden over here. It's currently locked. We can peek through a little bit here. Little religious, respectful garden. Potentially somebody could be buried there. I'm not 100% sure. But I do know that there is one person here who is buried, and that is Father Jayme. He was actually considered the first martyr for Christianity here in California. What ended up happening is about within a year after the mission opened at the new location here, Native Americans from the region came and actually attacked the mission, and he came to try to stop them, and he ended up getting killed for his efforts there. And they burned down some of the structures and building and whatnot. Father Serra came back down. He was actually in the process of building another mission, and he came back down here to help rebuild it. And that's when they ended up making it stronger by putting a little bit more of kind of like a square shape around it, building some walls and protection to help prevent future attacks. These These brick roadways are a little uneven. Gotta wear some good sturdy shoes around here. It's still very beautiful. Can't access any of this area, but still beautiful to see just the, the white and the brown peeking through with the beautiful vegetation. That's a good view right there. I love that. I got the fountain right there in the middle. Very large trees here. I'm sure some of these are 200 plus years old. They've seen a lot of history themselves. And let's take a look at it real quick. The fountain is not original. It's definitely a newer fountain, but built in the old style way. Wonderful. It'll take some reflection time here. Is it me, or is that tree kind of look like a Mickey in a way? You got the ears up over here on that side, and it has pop up his nose right over there. A modern abstract version of Mickey. Well, while the church service, or I should say the wedding / funeral, is happening right now, we're gonna go into more of the historical aspects, the museum of the mission here. The museum itself, it's been around for many, many years, open to the public, but they just redid part of the museum a couple years ago. So they've expanded it, redeveloped it, and it's been before. I've never seen it, so I'm excited to check it out. So now we're gonna go into some of the modern restructurized buildings of it, but still showing how life was back then. This building right here we're about to enter is the chapel, La Capilla. This one was built in 1977, so obviously it's a modern reconstruction of what a chapel would look like from the time. But what I found very interesting is that we're going to check it out, but there's choir stalls inside, 24 choir stalls, and a throne and altar that originated from a monastery in Santa Clara del Astudillo in Palenque, Castile, Spain, dating back to 1353. So there's items in here that are upwards of being close to 900 years old. 800 years old. That is crazy. So again, we're going to be respectful here. Luckily, there's nobody inside, so that's wonderful. Wow. Oh yeah, you can see the age in these choir stalls. 24 of them. That is crazy. There's a rope here, so we can't go much further. The altar, they're beautifully ornate. Look at the way that they're colored and painted in the wood. True craftsmanship, and the fact that they've lasted this long. The altar looks absolutely amazing. It's got lots of color left on it. Treated very well. Just imagine all the people who've stood in front or behind that altar. Probably some famous faces. Historical garments here that the religious leaders would wear. Right across the way here we got the La Sacristia, the sacristy. This is where the priest would actually get himself ready for his services, do his change into his robes, of course do business, conducting business. You can see there's his desk right over there. Unfortunately, it is closed and you're only able to go in with priest special permission. So here it is, the main museum part of it, El Museo, the museum. Like I said, this is something that's been redone a few years ago during the pandemic times. And I have yet to see this one in its new form, so I'm excited. Let's step on here. And as you can see, we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the mission itself, the history of the region of San Diego, Baja and Alta California. They even have a special section here just for the native people of this region. Now we're talking, here's a map here talking about Las Californias, all the way down to Baja California. We have Del Cabo, all the way up to Alta California, going down up to here to Point Reyes, San Rafael, and San Francisco. Obviously, we're talking about San Diego, right here, smack dab in the center. A lot of people actually don't realize, because yes, San Diego was the first mission in the new Alta California, but it wasn't the first mission. A lot of the missions actually were built down in Mexico, going all the way up into Alta California. So it's just the first one of the Alta California, built in 1769, and then I believe the next one after that was in Carmel, up here in near Monterrey, and then from that point on it was built at different variations. Fun fact, the distance between the missions is 1 horse ride away. So that's about, give or take, however long it takes one horse to ride from one mission to the other within a day. That's how far they built the missions, because the whole intent was that in an emergency or passing on message or whatever case is, all it took was 1 horse ride away to get to the next mission. Lincoln document 1821, Mexico gained its independence from Spain On February 2nd, 1848, California was annexed to the United States, and then President Abraham Lincoln returned 22 acres of the original 55 acres to the Catholic Church. Today, the church approximately only has 9 acres. Some dioramas of the different missions here in Alta California, all recognized by the traditional mission bells in the front, the church facade, Spanish-style architecture. Religious relics here, baptismal font, obviously a bunch of crucifixes. Well, this is from the 19th century velvet cope, which is a loose cloak used for ceremonial occasions. And you can see how finely threaded with actual gold and precious metals sewn into it as well too. Very beautifully done. An actual piece of 15th century parchment from an antiphonary, which essentially is a choir book. And it is relatively large. Only has 4 sentences and it's probably about at least close to 3 feet long. Those are actual communion wafer presses. You can see they will put the dough in between the 2 paddles and squeeze them, cook them and bake them, and then they end up getting the communion wafers with those particular shapes, which of course has some sort of religious connotation to them. Vessels for holding wine and water during Mass. The A and the V on top, agua for A and vino for wine. And then a couple of silver chalices from the 19th century there. Oh, and this one was actually used in Mass to hold wine. This chalice was used by Father Junipero Serra himself. Wow. That's a beautiful wall painting of what the mission probably looked like about 200 years ago. Lots of lush farmland around here. Got some livestock, some cattle, beautiful trees. What year is this? From 1923. So they had a lot of fundraising efforts and whatnot, people of the church, people from the San Diego regions, to try to restore as much as they can of the original site. And you can see there's a leftover portion, what was remained of the original front parish. And some other rooms here, can't really make out what those particular areas are. This newspaper alone being over 100 years old is impressive. Natural artifacts discovered here. Pieces of broken bottles from Mexican or U.S. militaries from 1820 to 1850. You have a miniature metate in mano, used for grinding. Some spoon and ladles. You have a clay pipe for plumbing. Here's a nice little timeline about the mission and San Diego. So of course, discovered by Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo, sailing from Spain, names the port of San Miguel. It actually wasn't until many years later that it ended up changing to San Diego. Originally it was named San Miguel because the day that they discovered San Diego, or current modern day San Diego, there was a festival the next day, the Festival of San Miguel, so they named it after the festival that was happening. 1602, Sebastian Viscano arrived on November 10th, renames the port of San Diego in recognition of Saint Didacus of Spain. 1769, due to a threat of what he believed was the Russians coming in on the northern side of the U.S., the King Carlos III of Spain decides to send some military and fathers to California to help start establishing points there so that we can have a presence in California for the potential Russians coming through the Bering Straits on the northern side of the United States. Or not the United States back then, but at least Alta California and undiscovered Pacific Northwest territories. And in that same year, on July 16th, the first mission was established 6 miles west of the current site on the Presidio Hill like we showed in a previous video. And then a few years later, they moved to the current site here. The Mission Dam, which is actually a very famous hiking spot here in San Diego, was built to help block the San Diego River and bring irrigation down here to where the mission is currently. And in 1833 through 34, the missions and missionaries were removed from Spanish rule with a decree of secularization and regulations. So now they are subject of Mexico. Later that same year, they started dividing up mission lands, initiating the rancho period in this area, and the mission area land was actually awarded to a Californian named Santiago Arguello, who is actually one of the very famous San Diegans here, who has his family's been here for many, many years. His brother-in-law was actually Senor Bandini, who owned Casa de Bandini in Old Town. 1848, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed, and California and other territories become part of the United States. Go to President Lincoln here, and he was awarding restores 22 of its original 55,000 acres of mission land back to the Catholic Church. Currently, as we said, they only hold about 9 acres. On July 1930, the church is rededicated in 1931 and is rebuilt to replicate the 1813 church. These are just replicas, but they show how the Franciscans were great record keepers here. They kept meticulous records of their daily routines, what they spent, what they took in, baptismal records. So these, of course, are just replicas of the original documents, but still very impressive. An actual table from 1700s, from the early 1700s. Interesting. Oh, and there's a little model that shows how the bells work. You can see how the pulley system would actually be attached to the wooden panel or wooden block that's above the bell. And then, of course, you have the actual line that goes down below into the church, and you can pull on it to ring the bells. Here is that dam that we were talking about, the Mission Dam and Aqueduct System, now affectionately called the Padre Dam. It actually still remains to this day, and you can see how they would use actual clay aqueduct pipes like this to transport the water from tile flumes to bring the water down from the river, from the dam, down to irrigate over here into the lands near the mission. Here you have a plow that was probably pulled by some sort of horse, mule, or even cattle. There's, of course, a cowskin rug there. Ropes, an olive press. Able to make olive oil. They could actually even do wine as well too. For religious purposes, friars in the Catholic Church were allowed to make their own wine, mead, and beer, believe it or not. It was another way that they could sell it to make more money. Oh, animal footprints. Even though these are replicas, they show how it was very common for adobe brick to have animal prints on them in the process of drying, so local wildlife could potentially go on top of a brick as it was drying and leave permanent footprints. That's cute. Probably some sort of dog there and a cat right there. That's so cute. Old door locking keys, chains, and a branding iron for all the cattle here. So if you take a look at that logo there, look at how that looks. Very familiar to a certain baseball logo, doesn't it? That is where they got it. You got the S, you got the D, and the P for the Padres. Well, I don't think they were thinking about baseball back then, but it was an S and a D for San Diego. So remnants left over here, irons, tools, hooks, nails, used for carpentry, a Spanish scale for weighing things and items, shackles for whatever case and purposes, keys. Wow. All articles in this case can be traced back to the era and summer palace of King Carlos III of Spain. Interesting. They even have some coins here used at the missions. The top row has those used by the Spanish Empire. And the particular friars that were here were part of the Franciscan order of Catholic Church, created by the St. Francis of Assisi, who is the founder of the Franciscans, patron saint of animals and environment. Here we have a story about 2 different fathers who came to the mission to lead it. We're going to talk a little bit first about Father Jayme, who we mentioned earlier was the first Christian martyr in California. During the attack, which occurred in November 4th, during the night, what originally started as probably a raiding party to steal goods and clothing and whatnot, ended up turning into disaster, as when they were awakened through the fire, Father Jayme came out to the Native Americans who were attacking and said, "Love God, my children." They took him and beat him to death. The next morning they did find him beaten badly and dead near the river, to which then he was buried here on the grounds, and we'll show that a little bit later of where he's actually buried. Well, after his death, they needed a father to lead the church here at the mission, so that's where Padre Laswin arrived, and he ended up taking over the mission San Diego after being asked by Father Junipero Serra, and he actually kind of led the mission into a great area of growth, both for converts or neophytes, as well as just growth in general. But you can see the numbers here of how much cattle, sheep, agricultural grain, everything that they were able to grade underneath his leadership. This next portion of the museum talks about the Native American people here, more specifically that of the Kumeyaay Nation. You have some pre-Hispanic Indian pottery from west coast of Mexico. The Kumeyaay ranged an area from about as far east as kind of Yuma, Arizona area, as far south as Baja California, and as far north as about kind of where Orange County is at. So a pretty large range. Lots of mortar and pistols, molcajetes, vases to carry water or grains or whatever the case may be, a rabbit stick and a bow. A rabbit stick was kind of very similar to like a boomerang. You throw it and hit the little critter and of course incapacitate them for hunting. A bow and arrow, of course. Elements of a smudging prayer, which is a prayer for cleansing. They would do, take an abalone shell, a feather fan, and white sage for cleansing purposes for both religious and festive ceremonies. Traditional baskets of the local tribes here. Storage baskets, burden baskets, pot, and all, which is a wooden needle used for like sewing purposes, repairing. Of course, you have stones used for various tool work, obsidian used for hunting and arrows. I just love the ornateness of baskets like this. So beautiful, the artistry in them. And there is a Kumeyaay elder in ceremonial dress, circa 1900. So these photos depict the sisters of Saint Joseph of Carondelet posing in front of the mission facade in 1883. And you can see how the mission is starting to become into great disrepair. You got the front part of the mission is here. Some of the area over there to the right is falling apart. The back side of the mission is almost completely gone. This is actually close to the area where we're standing at this very moment. In 1976, Pope Paul VI designated Mission San Diego de Alcalá as a minor basilica, a very prestigious award that's only given to so many particular missions. I believe the only other ones are San Juan Capistrano and Carmel. Papal brick from the Holy Year Door, 1975, a year prior to Pope Paul VI designated the mission as a basilica. This brick would have been in place until 1983, the first holy year of John Paul II. St. Anthony Industrial School, Sister of St. Joseph of Carondelet, with the guidance of Father Antonio Ubach, began a school for Indian children at the mission. You see various toys from the school, little iron stove, bassinets, chairs, a little mini iron. There's Father Antonio de Ubach. He established the St. Anthony School from 1891 to 1907. And probably one of his personal books and maybe even his glasses, I'm not sure. Got a sword and scabbard, a gin jug from the U.S. Army, spurs, well, most of this is probably from U.S. or Mexican armies, U.S. artillery sword, a Kentucky flintlock pistol, and some stirrups. Oh, and some musket balls, and a bullet casing as well too. And some sort of buckles or belts right here. The U.S. flag that was found in the mission, a few years old based upon the stars there. This is from, let's see, I believe the flag was made by a loved one of a military personnel. Oh, that I was not aware of. It wasn't until 1912 when President Taft established a specific design of stars. The flags could be made with any design or arrangement of the stars. So even if there was multiple states, which obviously this most likely was made during a time of more states, they could build it with 13 stars because there was no federal law prohibiting it. Here's how the mission looked in the 1840s when the U.S. military was taking residency here in the mission. Historical artifacts left over, whiskey bottles from the U.S. Army, various buttons from uniforms, buckles, pipes made out of clay pipes. It was very common to have clay pipes around here. You can see there's like some military stars around that one. Eating utensil, old forks and spoons, some eye spectacles, some sort of, that is a chamber pot, or as I like to call it, a personal restroom. Got some flasks, some glass flask, and some sort of, what is that, leather flask, medicine bottles, and a comb with all of its teeth missing. All right, here's something that's important to me here. A picture of the 1978 Padres in front of the Mission Basilica. And yes, of course, they are given that name because of the history of the Friars here. So it makes perfect sense to have our baseball team named after such an important historical group. You can see some sort of liquor bottle. Looks like it says Beam right there on the back side, so I'm going to assume it's some sort of a Jim Beam bottle. Interesting. It looks like but look at that Coke can. California's first church got the Mission Basilica on it. That is so cool. It even talks a little history below it of the picture. That is so cool. I would love to have that can. Oh, these are little mini bells of the different missions here in Alta California. Mission San Carlos, Mission San Gabriel, San Luis Rey, Santa Barbara, San Juan Capistrano, and Turkey's old mission olive oil bottle. It dates back to late 1800s. I don't know if I want to have that olive oil, if that's original olive oil in there, I'm not sure. Oh, nope, it was empty. Never mind, we're good. Oh, I can appreciate this tile mosaic here talking about the life of Jesus living up into the crucifixion. Of course, you have to have a crucifix of Jesus. This is the La Sala. This is another, looks like there's kind of an organizational room in which they can do events, meetings here. It's set up as if they're doing some sort of meeting over here, but can be used for additional church services. You can see they even have some of the traditional robes over here. I'm not sure we're supposed to be in here. It was unlocked, but I wasn't sure if we're allowed to, but I'm just gonna record really quick to show you. So now we are in the garden area. There's a meditation garden. Obviously the wedding is still going on, as you can hear. The Sala that we were just in right now, you can see that is an actual historical landmark, number 113, Mission San Diego de Alcalá, circa 1770. So we can go here into the garden. We're here, I know there's a St. Joseph statue here shortly up. There's one right there. There is another entrance to the La Sacristia, but there's actual priest in there right now at the moment for the wedding. So we're gonna let them be. St. Joseph right here. You can tell that nothing's really in bloom at the moment. Most likely rose gardens. Beautiful flowers here. They still have some poinsettias for the holiday season left over. It probably looks very beautiful here during the springtime, I'm sure. Right here we have a statue to Saint Francis of Assisi, the patron saint of animals. You can see him in his beloved pose here with a dove in his hand. I've seen him with like other animals. Over here is a statue of Father Junipero Serra, the father of the mission system here. And some crosses here. I don't believe anybody's buried here per se. I think they're just religious crosses made out of original brick and tile of the original mission, from what I understand. Taking a closer look here of the crosses there. Oh, hello, buddy. A lizard enjoying himself here. The most famous sight of all, the Campanario. That is essentially the bell tower there. So the Campanario, we'll zoom in a little bit there. The Campanario is 46 feet tall and holds the mission bells. The crown-topped bell on the lower right hand is named Ave Maria Purísima Immaculate Mary. It weighs 805 pounds and was cast in 1802. A crown-top bell was usually supplied by the Spanish king and cast in the Royal Foundry in Barcelona at the king's expense. And the bell on the lower left is called a Madre Dolorosa of Our Lady of Sorrows. It weighs 1,200 pounds and was recast by the Standard Ironworks of San Diego in 1895. And of course, the bells play an important role in the everyday life of the mission. A sequence of tones and rhythms was developed for each occasion. They were used to announce mass, work meals, and siestas. The bell signaled danger, rang solemnly to honor the dead, and joyously to celebrate feast days, weddings, and fiestas. We have statues here that represent some of the first 9 missions being built here. Mission San Diego de Alcalá. This one, the San Carlos Bardimio de Carmelo in 1770. Mission San Antonio de Padua, 1771. San Gabriel Archangel, so Saint Gabriel. This one is San Luis Obispo, slow. Mission San Francisco de Assisi. Mission San Juan Capistrano, where all the swallows come back to Capistrano. Mission Santa Clara de Asís. And in Mission San Buenaventura. So this is the spot in which Padre Luis Jayme was attacked by the natives that came in here. He is buried in the actual church itself. And as we come to the church, I want to take a look here. That is actually the burial spot for Father Jayme. He's buried right over there where you see that cross. And the last thing we're going to check out is the Casa de los Padres, the house of the Padres. And you can see it is kind of like a little mini museum here. But this shows a good way in which how the friars here would live. Some pictures here, departing for the missions, being blessed. The Franciscans as they came out west, founding of the missions in San Diego. The first baptism in Upper California. Father Unibrosera gives thanks. The martyrdom of Father Luis Jayme. Don Fernando de Rivera violates the church asylum. Constructing of the mission buildings. And you can see how they used a lot of the neophytes, the newly converted native tribe people. They got the two ladies here soaking some crushed corn on the metate. Of course, oxen cart. And plowing the land for growth. That's a very simple bed here being used. I don't know if these are authentic original pieces, but definitely to the time. You can see there's a ladder that goes up to probably most likely some sort of storage area. The Franciscan habits, very basic robes here. They would always have a more casual version that they would wear on the daily, and then a little bit more of an outer garment for colder weather and for more specific purposes. And of course they would have their religious garb that they would wear over such clothing. A trunk for some personal effects and longing, a Bible most likely, a little kneeling prayer area on a cross, simple cross. And yes, they would have to have some sort of activities or fun. This one in particular may have played the violin, who knows? A little chimney here for a fireplace for warmth. Some old-time pictures there. That one's from circa 1927, the front of the mission. I'm assuming these pictures are from the same, but that one's from 1930 on the reconstruction of the Campanario. This is of course a diorama that was created, 3D one. There's the mission up in the front. We are standing about right here in this room, and then the rest of the rooms will be used for organizational purposes, structure, classrooms, whatever it is, storage purposes. So this room is the only intact section of the earliest mission. As you look to the far right corner, you see the section that survived the longest. It is believed that this room was the Padres' living quarters because of the proximity to the church. According to tradition, it's believed that when Father Cerro returned to visit the mission, this is where he would have stayed. That is amazing. This room has been furnished to illustrate the simple lifestyle of the Padres. Ideally, 2 priests were assigned to each mission. One priest oversaw the administration of the mission in its land, and the other priest was responsible for teaching trades, Spanish language, and religion to the local peoples. In mission days, this room would never have been this large. It would have been 2 separate rooms. It is believed that the fireplace was added during the time that the United States military used the mission as with their presence in the mid-1800s, when this room was occupied by the family of the senior military officer at the time. Of course, as all things, we need to take a quick look at the gift shop. Large amounts of religious items, rosaries, little things you can put up on the wall, bless our home, bless this mess, all that good stuff. Angels and the stuff I tend to see at Hobby Lobby. It's the fiery hearts. They do have water here for $1.50. Other religious items, coins, charms, saints, crosses of all shapes, sizes, colors, crucifixes of the same. Some of them are pretty. Ooh, playing cards. I may get this. Look at this. Yeah, either one. Mission of California playing cards. Now that is actually really cool. I may actually get that. And with that, we're going to end our journey here today at the Mission Basilica de San Diego de Alcalá. Had a great time learning a little bit about history of our city, of my team, and its namesake, the Padres. A little bit of the history of California, going back all the way to when it was New Spain, and so forth to modern day California. It was a great time here, walking around the mission and doing a little tour of it. So if you did enjoy this video, do me a biggest favor, give it a big thumbs up for me. Second, subscribe to the channel if you're new here, you haven't done so already. Third, hit that notification bell. I have a lot of journeys on this channel that you want to check out. That of Southern California, museums and places here in San Diego, LA, Orange County, and so forth. Also, take it one step further, follow me on social media at Big Red Journeys on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram for even more content. So from me to you, thank you, to the newlyweds that we saw here at the wedding. Mazel tov, congratulations. And then we will see you on the next journey. Bye-bye now.